Hello, everyone. Hope you are doing well. This is Krista Mann from MLS Communications. Thank you for joining us today as Major League Soccer invites three American soccer icons, Eric Wynalda, Jeff Igus, and Bruce Arena, to recall the first match in MLS history. That match was between the San Jose Clash and DC United on April 6th of 1996. Before we get into the speakers, we have a few housekeeping notes and a couple reminders. During the video call, you will be able to see video of the speakers responding to your questions. Media members, we will not see your video. However, we will have your audio if you ask a question. Lines for media members are automatically muted until you are recognized for your question. At that point, please remember also to unmute on your end. To ask a question, there's a raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen. Take a second to find that. If you have a question, please click that icon. You'll be placed into a queue. I will acknowledge you and we will allow you to ask a question. And lastly, we will be recording this call and we will provide a transcript. Thanks again for joining us. The speakers on this call will be available in the following order. First, Eric Wynalda, second, Jeff Igus, and then finally, Bruce Arena. Let's get into our first speaker. I'm gonna add him to the screen right now so that you guys can see him. And here we have Mr. Eric Wynalda. I am going to unmute his line while I give a quick bio on him. Eric Wynalda became the hero of Major League Soccer's inaugural match. His goal in the 80th minute became the first score in MLS history and ultimately the game winner for the San Jose Clash to defeat DC United 1-0. He went on to a 6-year MLS career that included 4 trips to the playoffs, 34 goals, 37 assists in his 98 games played. Internationally, 3-time World Cup participant, he was named the U.S. Soccer Federation's Player of the Decade in the 90s, and he's previously held the record for the most goals scored in U.S. national team history. He now ranks 4th. After lately serving as an analyst for both ESPN and Fox, he has coached at every level of the game from youth to amateur and professional, which includes his current position as manager for the Las Vegas Lights Football Club in the United Soccer League. Eric, we thank you for joining us. Let's open for some brief opening comments about being part of this first game, and then we'll take some questions.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
We've got you.
Okay, perfect. First and foremost, just want to send all the love, and if I could hug you, I would, but we're not allowed to hug right now. And we're all in this together with this situation. But as a soccer community, I would remind us as coaches, as players, staff, and everybody that loves this game. Usually we're the great unifier in times like these, but we still have that opportunity to do the right thing and to stay home for now and make sure that we take care of ourselves, because by doing so, we end up taking care of all of us. But as a soccer community, I love you guys, and I'm understanding that we all have jobs to do still, so the work goes on, even though these are trying times. I just wanted to start with that, and I wanted to thank MLS for having me be a part of this call and this chance to reminisce of which I can't believe is 25 years ago. I think when we were doing some of these Zoom meetings prior to this, we all could attest to that through our hairlines. We're all getting a little bit older, but it really is an amazing day to look back at, and the inception of the league and the inaugural year, and certainly that game. We as participants now look back at that and it always puts a smile on our face. Jeff and I were kidding each other about the way the game ended with I got to be the hero, so to speak, and he beat me. I beat him on a play, and I reminded him also that he had me in his back pocket for the first 79 to 80 minutes of that game, and we are still both because of our affinity for the league and for the sport, happy that it was a good ending. He also reminded me that he got the last laugh. They ended up winning the trophy that year, and Bruce and Jeff, they like to remind me of that as well. But all in all, it was a fantastic day, and I'd love to answer any questions or tell some stories about some of the back rooms and some of the things that have never been really talked about prior to this 25th anniversary of it. So fire away, hit me with the questions.
Our first question comes from Paul Tenorio. Paul, go ahead. Remember to unmute on your side as well.
Hey, Eric, can you hear me?
I can.
Um, there's been a lot of talk, speculation over the last 25 years about how the league has evolved. I wonder from your perspective, being involved in the game still with players, seeing MLS and where it is now, how does the level of play and the level of players from 1996 and that first game, that first season, compare to the league we see today? Because I feel like when you look at players that were involved in the league, from yourself to Jeff, Carlos Valderrama, Marco Echeverri, there were still huge names involved in the league back then, just as there are now. Where do you think the level of play compares?
It's a great question, Paul. I think one of the things that people need to be reminded of is the infrastructure that now exists in Major League Soccer and the platforms that these players have to play on, and the beautiful stadiums, and just that part of it really changes this conversation and this answer. Jokingly, we were Taylor Twellman asked me earlier today who was better, Carlos Vela or Marco Echeverri, and I said it was an unfair question because it would have been great to see what Marco Echeverri at 26, 27 could do in the modern game, in the stadiums that now exist in this league. And I made the analogy of this was the guy that was, painting in a cave with his fingers, as opposed to a guy that has an open canvas and $1,000 paint set. So it's very hard to compare, but some of the players that we had in 96, the circumstances that we're playing on 60-yard wide fields, most of the conditions weren't optimal. They were really challenging. So it was hard to find space out there. So that's what made me really have an appreciation for guys like Valderrama, Echeverri, because they found space where it wasn't there. I mean, Valderrama was doing 1-2s in a phone booth, and players like Steve Ralston were introduced to the world because they got to play with world-class talent, and subsequently they became better players for it. So the comparison really isn't, it's almost impossible to do. But I do believe that now, because of the overall infrastructure and the facilities that we now have, and the knowledge that we have on the medical side as a manager, I learn more about this every day, that our players just have an unbelievable opportunity now, an unbelievable opportunity to progress and to become better soccer players, which we really didn't have in 96. We were still in the learning stages and still trying to figure out how to make this a better scenario. But I think that all we really need to know is that from then to now, we have gotten exponentially better at understanding what we need to do to make our players better. So we're going in the right direction. It's just we have more. We have just more. Maybe it was 30, 40 players that could really do it at an international level. Maybe it's 150 now. So that's progress. So we're very proud of that.
All right, our next question comes from Elliot Almond. Elliot, please remember to unmute your line. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks for doing this, Eric. You teased us by saying that you had some untold stories that you could tell, and I'm hoping they are about the day. Obviously, San Jose Mercury News, we really want to think about 25 years ago and play that part up. So anything that you can share with memories and vivid memories about that day, and of course, you became so, it was an indelible mark by scoring that goal.
I mean, that the goal is, it's funny because and Elliot, it's great to hear your voice. My daughter, Elliot, it's her birthday today. She's 4 years old, and I have 6 kids. And yesterday, when we started talking about, I got to talk to my kids for the first time about what that was like, and show my 15-year-old daughter the video of the game, which was just an amazing experience in its own right to have her get to watch that, and she wasn't even on the earth yet. So when you look back at what we were going through, I think that the hardest part for players in the 2 days prior, and maybe even the last time that we stepped on the field prior to the game, the day before, just the amount of people just running around and the anxiety that people were having. They had to paint the poles, which were the light poles, green so that they didn't stand out for television reasons. I watched Michael Cohen get in a pretty good argument with Peter Bridgewater, our then president and GM. And this was going on during our practice. So the hardest part was getting the guys to just focus on the game. We ate at the little El Fornero that's at the right down the street, downtown San Jose. And I remember they thought that the food was bad because 4 of our guys threw up after lunch. And it had nothing to do with the food. It was just nervousness. These were guys that had never played in a professional game and were just starting to feel the magnitude of what was about to happen, that we were going to be playing a game that the world was going to be watching. And the part for me as being a guy that had already played in a World Cup and 2 World Cups and had an opportunity to play in Germany is I was like the mother hen. I was trying to get all my guys to just figure out a way that they could focus. And I could go in a couple of other stories, but the reality was it was just the anxiety and the nervousness of the magnitude of that game and how much it meant to the progression of the sport. And our guys were really, really, really nervous until I'd say about 20, 30 minutes in, the game started to get better, but you could tell that it was just nervousness had taken over. The other part, I'll have to, Elliot, I'll have to call you privately and I'll tell you the other funny stories, and I hope that helps your piece. But some of that stuff, when you look back at it now, it's incredible. It really is truly incredible. And I just found out this week or last week that Chris Wondolowski was a 13-year-old boy and a very impressionable young man watching that game. And that just blows me away that we were making an impression on the next generation and we didn't even know it at the time. Did I lose you guys? I can't hear anything.
All right, can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, you cut out on my end, but we're all good. So jumping off the last question, I'm curious, Eric, what was it like in the community in the opening weeks in that first season in San Jose? You know, you talked about going out to eat at a local restaurant. I mean, was there some buzz around, you know, with this new team in town? Was there, you know, were you seeing yourself on billboards and whatnot? Like what was it like in the community, you know, around the first game and in that first season?
You know, at the beginning, I mean, nobody really knew much. We were, as much as we were trying to market ourselves and to be a part of the community, we hadn't started yet. So there was just such an unknown component of that. I even attribute this to something that happened to me much later when I was traded to the Chicago Fire. I was sitting in the airport with Chris Armas, and this woman came up to me and she said, "I just want to thank you for everything that you do because you guys are amazing." And I had just been traded to the team, so I had no idea. I was like, "Wow, this is really great. They really care about our team." And then Chris leaned over and said, "She thinks you're a fireman." So it was those. We had about 100 of those moments leading up to the San Jose game. Nobody knew who we were until after the game was over. And the hard part for some of our guys was, you know, once that game happened and it got the attention that it did, it really kickstarted a lot of things. People were so receptive, and then San Jose really got to show its true colors. And we used to go to Tony and Alba's, which is a family-owned restaurant there, and we were just unknown. Nobody had a clue who we were. But 6 months later, if we were to go in there, it was the royal treatment, and everybody knew who we were all of a sudden. So the starting point of all of this really was the first game. Once that game was over, and they kept rerunning the goal and rerunning the result, and it just gave us such a positive push in the right direction. So again, that's why, you know, we all, it's hard for me to talk about it sometimes because it sounds a little self-serving, but I'm just so glad that I scored and we finished that game 1-0, and it didn't give all the haters an opportunity to say, "Oh, look, soccer's boring, 0-0. It was a wonderful moment, and it really was the kickstart. So leading up to it was just madness. It was complete chaos. It was just, God, let's get to the finish line. Let's get this game started. Let's get this league started. So that we can just focus on the future. But everything leading up to that was really it was a tough haul.
Hi, Eric. Can you hear me okay? I lost. Okay, good. Listen, a couple part question here. At the time, how much doubt did you and the other top American players have who are coming home or starting, this journey here? How much doubt did you guys have that the league would make it, honestly, now in hindsight? And then also, if you could bring, Eric Wynalda from 1996 and, bring him, flash forward him to today, and he could look around, what would he think? Would he be satisfied with where the league, and what are the next steps you'd want to see?
That's a great question, Brian. Look, I think got me in a lot of trouble then, and sometimes it gets me in trouble now that some of the things that were coming out of my mouth in 1996 were only out of love. It was just me wanting the league to get better quicker. But it was almost because there were so many things to complain about, you would always get the, come on, just shut up and play the game and just we'll handle that and that'll get better. That was always that feel. But it was just guys like Tab and John, Marcelo, Lexi, Bernsey. All we wanted was in our coming back was to see a league of our own, to see that opportunity for our country to enjoy everything that this league has become now. So to the second part of your question, man, it's just awesome. Just the being able to go to games and I still, as a commentator, my job was essentially to converse with all of the coaches and players to try and, get storylines and try and figure out a way to put them in a good light, to make people understand that whether it was a story about the trials and tribulations of how they became or came to this point, or it was just celebrating how good they are. The opportunities that we now have as players, and myself being a coach now, is wonderful. I think that still, I still argue that point about the timing of the schedule. I still think that that's something that might be a part of the progression, maybe somewhere down the road. I don't think that promotion and relegation is something that we're ready for, even though it's something that people love to talk about. But the realities of where we are now and how far we've come, I would be blessed to be a part of this league now, just as I was then, but it would just be a heck of a lot easier.
Thank you. Our next question is from Ryan Tolich. Ryan, go ahead, unmute on your.
Hey, Eric, can you hear me?
I can. All right.
Perfect. Sort of piggybacking off that last question, obviously there were years where maybe you guys weren't sure what the future of the league was and everything would survive, and you fast forward 25 years and MLS is not just surviving but expanding, and then you look at where you are now with you're coaching in another league. There are other leagues in this league that can not just survive and thrive. At what point was there a turning point where it was like, all right, this sport might just work here, and looking forward now with MLS and USL and this sport as a whole growing, what's the next step to keep this sport, moving forward in this country?
I think the turning point really has been the culture of what MLS has created in all the venues. And the expansion is one thing. We've always looked at the United States as that there's little hot pockets of where soccer is and what would it be like if they had their own team and they could support their own team. And that doesn't mean that they have to be involved in Major League Soccer. Maybe they're not ready for that. But still, you look at the USL or even places like Detroit and Miami, they were able to turn this thing into something special. It's the reality of what soccer has become in this country right now. It's a phenomenal time to be involved in the game, and the investment that is behind it is now warranted. It was kind of like I hope this thing works out before, and now it's really, look, this is a real thing, and the culture that we have in this country that is backing the sport, not just at a club level, but a regional and national level, is unprecedented. So it's a wonderful time for all of us to watch the sport grow and to be what it is today. So, you look at the USL, for example, these are all teams and clubs that their purpose is really to produce players and to expedite that process of a player who's getting discovered and maybe he's not ready for Major League Soccer, but to make his way into Major League Soccer someday. All of that is progress. All of that is we're all in this together. We are becoming a better soccer nation through all of the outlets and the channels. And that's all because of the interest that comes on, city to city. And I see it here in Las Vegas. You see it in small little towns across the nation that everybody wants to be involved now. And it wasn't this thing where you were, 6 hours, by driving in a car to get to the closest professional game. We only had 10 teams back then. Now it's along 70, 80 teams where in these smaller markets people get to enjoy the game, and that's been the biggest component to me that just is screaming at this country's getting better.
Next question is from Jose Rodriguez. Jose, remember to unmute on your line. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much. I hope everybody's doing just fine. Eric, I wanted to ask you, how can you compare what you went through in 1996 and the coming years to what is going on right now with your rapidly growing league in the USL Championship?
It's very comparable, to be honest. I think it does, when I remember I guess it was when Don became our commissioner, and we had to go through contraction, which I still think was the smartest move that this league has ever done. Even though it eliminated Miami, we just weren't ready for, and we needed to consolidate the player pool and the talent. And we were living in fear of, did we have enough talent to support 10 teams at that time? What we now know is that we don't have enough teams for the talent that we have in this country. And that taking it a big step backwards to take a couple of big steps forward was the smartest thing we ever did. USL, it's different finances, and this is still people investing money in the game. This is still people wanting to be involved and to make the sport better. So it's comparable because you see young talent or talent that maybe it got overlooked at some point getting an opportunity. That's what the USL is. That happens to be what Major League Soccer, the perception of Major League Soccer was, I guess, in 96, 97, 98. And just filtering in some big names that were more of a draw. But I'm blown away every day at how much talent there is at the USL level. And these are kids living a dream, trying so hard just to make ends meet so they can have that opportunity. That's where we were back then. We're not there anymore. The salaries and the players and the talent that we have at Major League Soccer's level is so much different now. But there still is that undercurrent of let's not let any stone go unturned, and let's find players and let's find places for them to play, and then maybe they'll grow into something great. I mean, one of the greatest players, in my opinion, in U.S. soccer history is Tony Senna. Tony Senna came from nowhere, playing indoor, and then he was at the USL, NPSL level, and he made his way to Bruce's team, and then probably, in my opinion, was the best right back in the 2002 World Cup, and then went on to do great things in Europe. So that kind of player, they're out there, and that's what, when we all recognize that this is one big machine trying to produce players. That's the cool part about this. 96 was hard, guys. It was hard. Bad fields, bad locker rooms, not the resources that we have now, and we have the ability to give our players what they need to get better. We're still working on it at the USL level.
Our next question is from Charles Bohm. Charlie, go ahead.
Hey, Eric, thanks so much for spending time with us today and recollecting. It seems like you had a long and maybe at times stormy relationship with Lori Calloway. And now that the statute of limitations is kind of up, I wonder if you could share any of the inside story of that relationship and that vibe in '96 on the team.
I think Lori was put in a tough spot. If I was to go back and what the league was trying to do and what we were trying to promote, made me a part-time player for the San Jose Clash, and his frustration with that and our fights and were pretty intense. And he once said, because I love to play golf, and he said, okay, no golf 3 days before and 3 days after a game. And then all of us kind of looked at each other and, well, great, that's 7 days. So there's no golf allowed on this team. So we would have our arguments. But I think that it was so hard for him because for example, we were doing some promotions for the league, and he was having a hard time managing the group because there was so much going on my end that I had to take a red-eye flight to Tampa to do a photo shoot, and he demanded that I was the first guy to go. And I did the shoot. It only lasted like about an hour, but I was on a plane 3 hours later, and I would making my way back to San Jose because he didn't want me to miss training. Now, you spend 12 hours in a plane, and I arrived, and Francisco Maturano, our assistant coach, picked me up at the airport. And I said, well, what are you picking me up for? You know, I thought my wife was going to pick me up. And then I said, why are you in your gear? And why do you have a bag for me? And Lori wanted me to go run the stairs at Spartan Stadium because I had missed practice. And I ended up pulling my groin, and I missed 2 weeks. So it was this push and pull of him really not being able to getting so angry at the circumstances that I couldn't be with the team as much as he wanted me, that we ended up fighting all the time about everything. And it was never a healthy relationship. And again, these are times when I just wanted I just wanted our team to be better. You know, we would have 3.5 hour long practices, and I would just, at being me, would say, Coach, you got to stop it. You got to stop it. Guys are dying out here. We haven't even eaten anything for, you know, but in his nervousness and in his anxiety of trying to figure out how he was going to make our team better, he ended up making it really difficult on our guys. So I was the only one that was willing to step up and fight him on those things. So it became a problem. And for the record, I do know who put that banner that went over the stadium, and it was not me. So let's just set the record straight. When somebody hired a plane and flew a banner over saying that the class should fire their coach, meaning Lori Calloway, that was not me. But I'll save that for the book.
All right, thank you. We have a question from Jimena Lugo Latore. Jimena, you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Erica. Did you keep any memorabilia from the first inaugural game?
So unfortunately, the end of 2018, my house burned down in the Woolsey fires in Thousand Oaks, and I lost almost all of my memorabilia, which is really sad because I had about 180 jerseys, and some of them were absolutely terrific. But to answer your question, a very good friend of mine, Brian, who owns a printing company and business in San Jose, actually, I lost a bet to him, and he has the inaugural game jersey. I don't know where it is hanging up now, but he kind of swindled me on that one. I had the jersey that I wore in the first half, but I did not. He ended up with the jersey that I actually wore when I scored the goal. So it's somewhere in San Jose. I'll have to call him and figure out how I can make sure that it's still with us. I think it is. I'm fairly sure, but that's it. That's all I have from that. Due to the fire, I lost everything.
With our final question, we have Brian Scaretta. You're unmuted. Please unmute your line and go ahead.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for the second question, too. Eric, in 1996, the idea was selling the sport of soccer to the skeptical American public. You know, in 2020, it seems like soccer is there, and no one doubts that, but there's huge competition now from European leagues and Americans who only want to watch the top European leagues. That's quite a bit different than 96. How different of a battle is that, and how harder or easier is that battle for the league compared with selling the sport in 1996, in your opinion?
Look, I always think there's going to be doubters. There's going to be Euro snobs. That hasn't changed, and that never will change. We have to accept that as a reality. But I think, again, when Don came in, he made some fundamental changes. It may have been Ivan Gazidis, who I think he is the first guy to develop what I think it was called Game First, which was so smart. It was the turning point where we made it all about the game. having a single anthem, having a way of doing things that was recognizable, making sure that everything looked the same. It wasn't so fragmented or one team doing it differently than others. I thought that was one of the turning points. It'll always be a challenge. There'll always be people that think that our league isn't good enough, or some league is better than others, and some of that is it's all perception and opinion. But the greatest challenge that we have, I guess that we're talking about here is one that we're creating. I don't think we should care. I don't care what the rest of the world thinks. If we take care of ourselves and our own product, and we are all, rowing in the same direction, our job is to make the sport as the best it can be here, and the product on the field the best that it can be here. That's it. Whether people want to compare us to someone else that's up to them. But if we get this right, and we start to produce the kind of talent that I think we can, with the platforms that now exist through our league, we're going to eventually challenge to win a World Cup. And that is the objective. The objective is to be the best soccer nation that we can be. That will always be our challenge, but that's every country's challenge. So I think what we all need to do is take a step back, be very proud of how far we've come in 25 years, and realize that this is real. People do care, and the culture that we now have created, that our fans have created for us, is real, and we need to build off of that. Because if we continue in this direction, eventually we'll be the soccer nation that we all hope to be. We all want the same thing.
Eric, thank you so much for your time today. This has been great for our media members. We're going to change things up now and look at the side from DC United with Jeff Agus. So thank you again. Now we're going to add Jeff in. One moment, please. So Jeff Agus was a DC United defender in that inaugural match. He played the full 90 minutes of the first game, and he vividly recalls those crucial waiting moments, including the San Jose 88th minute game winner. With Agus commanding the back line, DC United bounced back that year to conquer a historic trophy double, winning MLS Cup and US Open Cup during that same inaugural season. His 10-year MLS career included 5 championships in the league's first 8 seasons. An international play for the US men's national team, he appeared in 2 FIFA World Cups, 1998 and 2002, the 2002 CONCACAF Gold Cup, and the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games. Agus is now an executive at the MLS League office as Senior Vice President of Competition. Jeff, thank you for joining us today. And we will open it up for opening remarks. Jeff, we don't quite have your camera.
Let me see. How's that?
There you are. Hey, Jeff.
Yeah, how are you? How's everybody? Thanks, Krista. I really appreciate it. And obviously, I'm honored to be part of this type of history, and really proud of the legacy I think we've made in our efforts to make Major League Soccer one of the best leagues in the world. Certainly, as an American player playing in an American league, I think it was critically important to prove to this country that soccer was really part of the fabric of professional sports. I'm happy to say that the quality of our play continues to improve each and every year. You know, our teams become more and more relevant in their respective marketplaces, and our fan and supporters culture is some of the best in the world. I'll also echo Eric's sentiments about what an unprecedented time this is, and how important it is to really stay at home and keep your family safe. I'm proud to know that we have former players like Marshall Leonard and Robbie Russell, who are really at the forefront of this battle, who have gone on from MLS to become doctors and are now literally battling this at the front lines. So we're very proud of people like Robbie and Marshall. We also know that sports play such an important role in our daily lives, but keeping our families and our players and our staff safe is really our primary concern right now. That being said, I've really, from a personal standpoint, been looking forward to celebrating our history and our past, and especially as we contemplate really what our future looks like, long-term future looks like. I'm proud to see what we've built, and we stand on the shoulders of all of those people who have come before us, and hope that those who come after us really understand this history and the work that went into the development of Major League Soccer. We've really come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the '96 season or that first game here in San Jose.
Our first question comes from Pablo Maurer. Pablo, go ahead.
Hey Jeff, I appreciate you making the time to do this. Sort of an interesting question, but just generally, I wonder if you think that MLS, obviously, when it started in '96, was a bit of an upstart and did things a little bit differently as far as rules with a shootout, countdown clock, that sort of stuff, uniforms, you name it. Over the years, the league has obviously made efforts many times for better to align more with the global game. I wonder if you think that a little bit of uniqueness or sort of fun has been lost over the years. I'm not sure if that question makes sense to you, but do you think that I think the more that MLS becomes the same as the global game, maybe the less sort of unique and sort of like a standout the league becomes?
It's a really interesting question, Pablo. What I'll say is, there's a balance between keeping it very unique. And I think you could just look at this from a salary budget perspective and look at it in that unique focus, because no other league in the world has the type of salary structure or roster and budget guidelines that we have. So there is some uniqueness. We also have to balance it with being authentic and understanding that this is the world's game, that this is more than just the United States and Canada, that we are representative of this region. So it's trying to keep that balance. And I think, as Eric had alluded to before, the Game First initiative really moved us in alignment with the rest of the world. What I'll tell you is, from a very selfish standpoint, I love the shootout. And I would love to see it come back. I don't think it's going to come back, but I personally really enjoyed that part of it. But I understand where we are today. I really enjoy watching the talent that's being developed in our clubs today. I enjoy the new players that have come in, just some incredible players. And look, I also say that our officiating, I think, is continuing to improve year after year, and we're seeing officials in pro going to some of the top competitions in the world, including the World Cup and other major events. So I hope that answered your question. I certainly understand the unique piece of this and have an affinity for some of that.
Question is from Elliot Allman. Elliot, go ahead.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Jeff. I just want to ask you to go back to April 6, 1996, to the game, and just talk about, from your perspective, on really just that goal, because it was so important, even if you didn't want to be one of the defenders. And I'll make the argument that, you did your job. You needed people behind you to help you out there, because it is Eric Wynalda going at the goal. But what was going through your mind? Just take us through that play. 3 minutes left in the game, and boom.
Yeah, thanks for bringing me back, Elliot. It's look, it's a memory I have fondness for in a certain way. As a defender, and having to face Eric Wynalda on the 88th or 89th minute in a one-on-one is not an ideal place to be as a defender. Nonetheless, I give Eric an incredible amount of credit for what he was able to accomplish. And look, I do remember at the end of the game, in the shower and coming out of our locker room, feeling obviously disappointed in the result, but I felt like the worst outcome we could have had was a 0-0 game, and that everybody had complained about soccer is boring, and that what Eric did and what the team did, what the Clash was able to pull off, the fans, they wanted to come back. They wanted to see another game, and we really created a lot of momentum. Obviously, it was a challenging situation for us as a club. We went on to even more challenges. I think the next 6 or 8 games, we wound up being 2-5 or 2-6. And it was challenging for us. But to look back on that now, understanding, what we've been able to accomplish in winning the championship in 1996, I'll trade that goal for the championship in the inaugural MLS Cup any day of the week. It was a very special play. It was a very special moment. It was an interesting moment for me personally, just because of what that stadium would represent in my career, going forward. I was traded to the Earthquakes in 2001 and won 2 championships there and played at Spartan Stadium. And so, I've got a very warm and fuzzy feeling for a lot of moments in that stadium. I don't know if that one would count, but it was a really positive experience for our league, for our fans, our players, and I'm happy just to have been part of it.
Our next question comes from Mario. Paul, please unmute your line.
Hey, Jeff. I know you talked about kind of the quality of play in the league increasing. I wonder your perspective on the difference in quality of play, because it feels like almost maybe the league was closer to the 96 through, 2000-ish level of play than maybe it was later on in its evolution, because there were players like Echeverry and Valderrama, Jaime Moreno. Later on, you saw guys like Stoichkov, Kosecki, Kubik coming in and playing, who had these huge backgrounds. Having played with some of those guys, how do you rate the level of play compared to the players you're seeing today? And as one little tack-on note, watching back that goal, you're wearing the red shorts. DC United looks like they might be bringing them back, so I got to ask your opinion on that too.
I have good memories of those red shorts, so I'm happy to see DC, bringing those back into play. In terms of the overall quality, I think there's a lot of difference between now and then. We have 26 growing to 30 teams here in the next couple of years versus 10, and so you have a different number. We have 500, 600 players, whereas we had probably 150, 200 players then. But the players we had in that first phase of MLS 1.0 were truly spectacular. I was fortunate enough to be able to see Marco Echeverry, Jaime Moreno day in and day out, and some of the things that they did were unbelievable. The things they tried to do were unbelievable that nobody got a chance to see. I know that people see them, through the lens of competition and games, but I'll tell you, they were far more remarkable in training than what you'd see in games. We do see some really important players coming through now with our clubs. We see Carlos Vela, for example, in LAFC. So many good players are coming through the system. But I think also importantly, we're seeing a lot of players developed in MLS as well. And I credit our owners for continuing to invest not only in player development and recruitment, but also in our infrastructure. I mean, we're looking at 7 stadiums coming online, billions of dollars in funding and investment. So overall, it's obviously important to have high quality on the field, but you have to have, as Eric said, a really nice canvas for you to paint on. And I think that's what we're seeing here today.
Our next question is from Jimena. Jimena, go ahead. Please unmute your line.
Thank you. Who was your toughest opponent in 1996?
My first opponent in 1996? It was probably the field more than anything, but we obviously played the Clash on the 6th of April, and that was our first official match. We had a long preseason, a 4.5-week preseason, where when we started, I think all 10 teams were in the same place in Southern California. So it was an interesting way to start the league. Obviously, with the kickoff against San Jose was a great way to push the league forward. But I'll tell you that field was a really challenging place to play. And as I said before, I came to know it a lot better when I was traded to San Jose in 2001. And like I said, I think I have really good memories. The fans there are absolutely some of the best fans you would ever have in any league and any venue in Major League Soccer.
Jeff, before we let you go, obviously this inaugural game will be streamed on MLS YouTube and Facebook pages Monday at 4 p.m. How will you be watching it and where?
I'm going to probably watch it on YouTube as well. I've seen a couple of the highlights, but I think, just seeing the pregame and the halftime will bring back a lot of memories. If I remember correctly, I think Alexi was on at halftime, and probably, sunglasses and a worn shirt or something. So I'm looking forward to remembering a lot of very good memories and a lot of very good people.
Thank you, Jeff. We appreciate your time today, and we are going to move on to our next presenter. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Bruce Arena, and he is going to be on your screen momentarily. Give us one. Bruce, could you please enable your camera for us? Bruce Arena is the winningest active head coach in MLS history. He was on the touchline for this DC United during the league's inaugural match. His record-setting coaching accolades include 5 MLS Cup titles, and he ties for the most MLS Coach of the Year honors and MLS Supporter Shields, and he won 3 of each of those. Arena managed the U.S. men's national team through 2 separate stints, which included the FIFA World Cups in 2002 and 2006, and through the CONCACAF. And he had 3 CONCACAF Gold Cup titles. Arena is also credited for building a dynasty over 18 seasons as head coach at the University of Virginia, where he won 5 NCAA Division I national championships and 6 ACC titles. Arena is the current sporting director and head coach of the New England Revolution. Thank you for joining us today. We are unable to see your camera. If you could try to, there you are. Hi, Bruce, how are you? Great, I've still got you muted. Let's see if we can get you off mute. Okay. I think we've got you. Bruce, can you just give me a quick hello? Oh, we're having trouble hearing your audio. Let's see. Okay. You're on mute. I have now unmuted you. Let's see. One moment, everyone. Thank you all. Bruce, we're very happy to have you. I cannot hear you. I can see you asking me though. Let's see. Is your microphone on your computer on? Apologies, everyone, and thank you. Okay, push that same again. You just muted yourself. If you could unmute. We're having some slight technical difficulties. If everyone could just bear with us for one moment, please. I can't hear you. Let's keep trying. I'm going to take you out of this chat and add you back in, okay? Give me one moment. Maybe we can just try to start over. Okay, we've promoted you to a panelist. You've been unmuted on our end. Let's see, give me a quick hello. Oh, Bruce, we'd love to talk to you. I don't know what's going on. Everyone could hold. We are going to sort out a separate solution. Hold, please. Bruce, we're going to try to call you via cell and we'll work on the audio that way. So give me 1 second and we're going to call your cell. Thank you. It could also be the settings on your computer, but no worries. We are going to make this happen. I'm giving you a call right now. All right, everyone. I have Bruce via phone. Bruce, can you mute?
You want me to mute?
Just your computer. Let's see. How does okay.
I'd like to apologize to everyone for the delay. I think following Eric and Jeff would be difficult.
We are still getting quite a bit of reverb.
Yourself because should I get off the phone?
Yeah, let's hang up and try just that audio. All right, Bruce, can you hear me? I think it might be an audio setting on your computer. Hi, everyone. Thank you for holding tight. We hope to have this resolved shortly. Thanks for staying with us. We will be right back. Okay, let's see. Do we have you now? I think it might be a computer issue. Thanks again. As mentioned, we will be back momentarily. Thanks for standing by. We hope to have Bruce to you shortly. See if we have you. Still not getting anything. Bruce, do we have you?
Yes.
All right, well, thank you for joining us and apologies for the challenges. Still got some reverb. Okay, last thing, if you computer, we'll be good to go.
Okay.
All right, if you could give us a quick hello, let's see if we are clear now.
Hello.
Fantastic.
Can you hear me?
Go.
Wow, we've managed that, huh?
We did. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And as we commemorate April 6th, the first MLS game ever, you were on the touchline for this. Take us back to that day and your experience. And then media members still on the call, please feel free to raise your hand if you have a question.
Well, first of all, I'd like to apologize for the audio and video issues we've had. I'd like to thank the journalists that have stayed around for the call today. First of all, I too would like to mention these are difficult times, and I'm wishing everyone in our country and around the world the very best, and hopefully everyone can be safe and we get through this battle. And you know, I'm really proud of people in MLS that have contributed to try to support this battle. Mr. Kraft has done a wonderful job in sending the New England Patriot plane to China to bring back supplies for the cause. So I'm really proud of how the soccer community has done everything they could to try to support this difficult battle we have. And certainly sport is secondary to all the things that are going on right now. And I'm certainly well aware of that as well as you people. So as we go back to MLS in 1996, I think it was a monumental time for the sport in our country. And coaches like myself, and at the time Bob Bradley was my assistant, you know, we labored real hard at the collegiate level, and we were biting at the bit for the professional league to come back. You know, we were supporters of the NASL, and when it went under in the 80s, you know, we thought a professional league would never return. And obviously, as part of having the '94 World Cup in the United States, we pledged to FIFA that we'd start a league again. And we got to 1996. And it was a great moment for, I know, American coaches and American players in particular. And, you know, I know at the time Bob and I were quite proud on that day to be part of the new professional league in the United States. And 25 years later, we've battled an awful lot to keep this league afloat. And today, I think the league is positioned to really move up another tier among professional leagues in the world. And we continue to improve. It's been absolutely awesome to observe
as an outsider for 9 years when I was coaching the national team, as well as being part of it as a coach. And to this day, I'm really proud where the league is. We've made fantastic progress. We keep getting better, and I think we're going to position our league to be among the best in the world. And I think we're also going to position the sport in our country to be among the best in the world. And as Eric mentioned earlier, one day to perhaps win a World Cup. So those are our goals, but the sport has come a long way. And that day in April of 1996 was a fabulous day, and it gave us the impetus to be where we are today. So at this point, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
All right, we will kick it off with Paul Tenorio. Paul, go ahead and make sure you're unmuted on your line.
Thanks. Bruce, I'm sure you heard my question to the first two guys. I'd love to get your thoughts on the difference in quality of play from then to now, but also your recollections of how Marco and Raul Diaz-Arce and Jaime Moreno ended up being signed to MLS and to DC United, and maybe how that's similar or different than looking and signing top players in the league today.
Well, today we have a discovery process and obviously a designated player process that is different than it was in '96. Marco was assigned to us when we started the league. Raul Diaz-Arce, we drafted him. He was one of our picks, and I can't recall exactly what that draft was called when we picked up Raul. Jaime we signed in June or July of that year, and he was just a player we picked up, where today you probably couldn't do that because you'd have to go through the discovery process, and perhaps we would not have been in line. But that's how those three players were part of DC United. In terms of you mentioning, how the talent adds up today to what it was in '96. For sure, in '96 there were some fabulous players in the league, and it was mentioned already. Echeverri and Moreno, and in Valderrama we had Donadoni in New York with the Metro Stars. I would say this. I would say in those days that every team had, or for the most part, one or two pretty good players. I think today rosters are much stronger. The starting 11s are stronger. Players 12 through 16 or 18 are stronger. There's a lot more depth in the league today, a lot more quality in starting lineups. As I looked at the starting lineup for DC United on that day, I can tell you, I realized how poor a coach I was then. The way I set the team up that day, the way we played, we played poorly, and we had players on the field that maybe a month later were no longer part of DC United. So there was a big swing there. So the league, when we started in '96, wasn't really ready to run a professional league. We were all learning as we went. I know DC United, we did a poor job selecting our initial roster, and we learned as we went. And the opening game sure told us a lot about our team, and we knew we had to get better as coaches. We had to bring in some better players, and by the end of the year, we were the best team in the league. So all those challenges, the league then, it was, the direction we were going, we were never sure. Everything changed, how we did things, and you look to our league today, it's a very well-run professional league, and we have a lot of order. So things have changed and improved a lot over 25 years. But I would tell you, Eric said earlier, it's a lot easier now than it was then. I don't really believe that. It's as hard today as it's ever been, but it's a really great league in terms of the way it's run and where we want to go. So we're making great progress, and I really believe one day MLS will be among the best leagues in the world. And I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. I was at a ceremony with Don Garber, and I told him for the 50th anniversary, we're going to have a bottle of champagne and celebrate where the league's going to be at. Who would ever think MLS would be 25 years old? And I know it's going to make it to the 50th anniversary as well.
Next question is from Brian Scaretta.
Hey,
Brian?
Bruce, how are you doing? First of all, thank you for doing
Good.
this. And second of all, back in '96, how much doubt did you have that the league would survive out of a couple seasons, and what was the turning point? And then, as a follow-up question, you also said you see a lot of growth ahead of it. What is going to be the turning point? We saw designated player rules and academies and all this other stuff implemented, but what is going to spark the next wave of growth?
Well, your second question next, we get better every year, and as the league becomes more successful on the commercial side, we're going to continue to attract better players and have better resources to bring in some of the top players in the world. There's no secret about the fact that the reasons why some of the top leagues in the world have the players they have is because of the financial resources they have. We don't have that yet in our league, but we will one day. And as we keep growing, I believe the level of talent's going to improve in the league. I forgot your first question now. Brian? Hello?
Sorry, we've lost Brian. Let me bring him back into you.
Oh.
In the meantime, we're going to go to Tim Sullivan. Tim,
Okay.
open. Go ahead.
Hey, Bruce, you mentioned that you and Bob were kind of chomping at the bit to start in a professional league. What does it say about the growth of the league and maybe the growth of the infrastructure of soccer in our country that you don't see as many guys nowadays? Obviously, that was kind of a different situation, building a league out of whole cloth, but as many guys coaching and to a lesser extent from the player pool coming out of college nowadays.
Yeah, I think obviously the coaching end has been a little bit erratic over the 25 years, and today you see a great influence of international coaches, but we had them in the first year of the league as well. So I don't think it's changed drastically. However, I think in this day and age, I think it's very difficult for any owner to hire a coach out of college, whether that's right or wrong. You know, I see that obviously not completely accurate because there's a couple of coaches for sure in the collegiate ranks that can coach in Major League Soccer. The other part of your question, you asked about the American player. Hello? Hello?
For the journalists
Hello?
on the line, if you could just ask one question first. If you have a follow-up, please feel free to raise your hand again. But as soon as you speak, your line is muted and then you have to get back in the queue. So just a heads up for that. It does become a bit of a challenge, but we will work through it. As such, Brian, we are going to allow Brian Scaretta to ask his second question now. Brian, go ahead.
Hi, Bruce. It's me again. The first part of my question before this was how much doubt did you have about that the league would survive looking back at the time? And then what was the turning point to the when you realized that this league was going to be around for the long haul?
I think the question would probably be better answered by Don Garber, but after the '98 season, I started with the U.S. national team. So I coached DC United in '96, '97, '98, and then '99. The '99 season is my first year as a national team coach, and I'm obviously following the league as a national team coach. And there were a lot of ups and downs in the league, and I think around 2001 and 2002 there were some doubts about the viability of the league, and I think what really helped the league was the showing by the U.S. team in the 2002 World Cup. And that gave the league and the sport in our country a real shot in the arm. And I think that gave us a little bit of momentum to keep the league alive. And then probably once the Beckham rule came in, I think it really picked up the league and we started to get global interest. And then everything has taken off over the last 10 years. But we did have doubts. I think in the early part of that decade, there were some real doubts about whether the league was going to survive. But having said all of this, I think Don Garber could probably give a better answer to your question.
Up next, we have Tim Sullivan again, followed by Pablo Maurer and Elliot Allman.
Thanks, Bruce. The second part of my question was kind of similar. From a player perspective, now that, you know, directly college to pro to, I guess, college to MLS isn't kind of the only path. Right. How do you kind of see that the league has grown in the past 25 years to allow multiple paths into the league?
Well, just think about the American player today. A lot of our elite young players are in our academy systems, so they're not going to college. And there's a number of examples that you're probably well aware of. But we still have players out of the collegiate ranks, and in fact, right now, the New England Revolution, we have our top draft picks playing. I still think there's a future for the American player, obviously, in the league, and there needs to be. I think that's going to be important as the league continues to grow. But the league's the objective of the league is not to develop American players; it's to create the best product possible. Therefore, I think over the last 6-7 years, you've seen a much greater influence of international players in the league, and that's good. It's good competition within teams and within the league. And the American player today has to really battle to get on the field, and I think that's good. It's only going to help make American players better.
Our next question is from Pablo Maurer. Pablo, go ahead.
Bruce, thanks for doing this. I'm curious, obviously, MLS when it started was pretty unique, had some pretty unique rules, the obvious ones, the shootout, countdown clock, etc. As the years have gone on, obviously the league has sort of aligned itself more, with global football. I'm curious if there's any part of you that misses any of the quirkiness of the league in '96, the uniforms, the rule changes, that sort of stuff. Thanks.
I don't miss the uniforms, but Jeff Agus mentioned this. I thought the shootout was fun, and it took a lot of talent to shoot out, and there was some remarkable goals and exciting times during the shootout. So I thought that was fantastic. I would prefer, actually, in all competitions around the world, if games went into overtime and teams played out the 30 minutes of overtime and still tied, I'd love to see a shootout rather than penalty kicks. But after 120 minutes, I think the players would probably be exhausted. But that was a great rule. There really weren't any other rules that were a whole lot different then. But I think the evolution of the league in terms of infrastructure, from training facilities to the stadiums we have today, has changed the league drastically. It makes the product much better. We can train players better. Our games are considerably better. So, we've made a lot of progress over the 25 years for sure.
Our next question is from Elliot Allman. Elliot, go ahead.
Hey, Bruce.
Hi, Elliot.
Just really want to hi, good to hear from you. I'd just really want you to go back to the game 25 years ago, and if you could recount some of your memories, I don't know, sights and sounds, and obviously it's almost hard to believe 25 years ago, because you were a successful college coach, and we think of you now as such an icon of American soccer and coaching, but I guess back then you might have been a little bit unproven because you hadn't really coached a professional game at that point.
Yeah, I certainly was an icon that day, and I look at our team, and Bob and I at the time we were wearing two hats. We were coaching the Olympic team as well as DC United. So I think we didn't do a good job in selecting our initial roster. And when I look at the way we lined up that day and how we played, we had a big learning curve ahead of us. And that day, I remember John Harkes came in maybe a week before we played that game, a week to 10 days. He came from England. He was playing at Derby, so he wasn't fit. Marco Echeverry reported about 15 pounds overweight. He wasn't fit. We never experienced this as coaches, but we had 4 players in our starting lineup that didn't speak any English. Raul Diaz-Arce, Marco Echeverry, Mario Gori, Chicho Suarez, our striker. And so our communication was crazy. Our team wasn't fit. We had an awkward preseason. The week before the game, we're in D.C. training, and it's snowing in D.C. Then we come out to California to play. And that team that day we started, there's 3 or 4 of those players weren't on our roster maybe 4 or 5 weeks later. So we had a lot to learn as coaches. We had a lot to learn as a team. And that day, I can remember we were just pretty poor. But I would say that, I hate to say this to Eric, that the goal he scored was pretty damn good. And afterwards, I do remember Doug Logan and Sunil Gulati saying to us, we're happy there was a goal scored. We had to have a goal that day. And they certainly got one. It was a great goal by Eric. But, you know, what I recall, that whole build-up, how proud we were when the Star Spangled Banner was played that day. They introduced the teams, and it was something we all waited for many years, to have a professional league back in the country. And it was a great day for that. And think about it 25 years later, where we are. We're very critical of our league. You know, we criticize the players, the coaches, the national teams. The sport is made in our country, you know, and we're going to get better. And there's no question anymore. 25 years ago, people would question whether soccer would ever make it in this country. There's no question about that today. Our sport is here to stay. And now the question is, how much better are we going to be? And I do believe one day we can be among the best leagues and the best national teams in the world.
Thank you, Bruce. Our next comment or question is from Charlie Bohm. Charlie, go ahead.
Hey, Bruce, appreciate you spending this time with us. One of the names you mentioned that didn't stick around very long, I think mainly because of an injury, was Saeed Fazlagic, who seemed to have an interesting backstory. I wonder if you have any recollections of him and how he came to you guys and your interactions with him.
Well, I think Bob Bradley was following him. If I'm not mistaken, he was from Bosnia. Is that correct? Fazlagic? You can't answer that.
Yeah, that's correct.
We saw him we had a combine in the league. We looked at his background. He had an interesting background, and we selected him. And although we didn't know him that well as a player, but Serbian, one was a Bosnian, and you know, we thought they had potential. But again, at that point in time in our careers as coaches and our experience with players from abroad, we certainly didn't know. And I think 4 or 5 weeks later, we decided that we had to go in a different direction. Okay, the next question. Hello?
The next question is from Brian Scaretta. Brian, go ahead.
Oh,
Hello?
I had my hand up accidentally. I don't have, I'll defer to the other journalist. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Our next question is Ryan Tomlich. Ryan, go ahead.
Hey, Bruce, I appreciate you taking the time, but just looking at, you know, you've mentioned a few times that you look back at that initial roster and that initial team, and a few weeks later it was very different, but it's such a different process. You know, you look at expansion teams now and they have to build a team from scratch, but it's mostly from guys that you kind of know, that you could kind of scout. But, you know, building that first team for you guys was totally different in that you didn't really have, you know, much history to really go on. You know, looking at that process for you guys as a coach, how did you kind of approach that at the time? And looking back at it, is there anything you would have done differently?
Well, there's a lot of things we would have done differently. But, you know, today the league is so much more sophisticated. We have, you know, scouting departments. A lot of advanced work on players. Then it was a combine with a collection of 50 players would show up, and you got to kind of have a good eye for players and think that these are players that can help you. The other part, in the early days of the league, there was the old American Soccer League, and a lot of those players were the players that started in Major League Soccer. And I know I didn't have much of a background with players in that league. So when we drafted players and you know, we scouted players in the different combines we had a real quick shot at observing them and evaluating them. And some you get right, some you get wrong. And we did find in the early stages the coaches in the league that were around the American Soccer League. And one example would be Dave Durr, who led Dallas. Dave had vast experience in that league, and he was able to assemble a pretty good roster because he had a better understanding of those players than we did. So the early parts of the league, your initial roster on game day, we had 18-man rosters then, and we didn't do a good job to start, but we were fortunate that the rules then allowed us to pick up players without going through the discovery process and other processes that we have today. So we were able to rally a little bit, a month or two into the season, bring in some new players. We brought in Jaime Moreno in June, and we started to get going. I think we brought in Tony Santa a little late as well in that year. So we learned from our mistakes, and we got better as we went along. And I think Jeff alluded to the fact we were 2-6 to start. I think we were 1-7-1, something like that in our first 9 games. And by the time the month of July came around, we were arguably the best team in the league, and we showed that as we closed out the second half of the season in '96. But a different experience. Today, everyone's more sophisticated. There's a set of rules that you need to adhere to on how you build your roster, and that it requires that you do a lot of work ahead of time and you get it right. And in the early years of the league, we were winging it for the most part.
All right, Bruce, we'll take a couple more questions. Up next is Jose Rodriguez. Jose, unmute.
Hey, Coach. Can you talk a little bit about Marco Echeverri and Jaime Moreno on how much do you think they contributed to the league, bringing experience from South America and just quickly adjusting to soccer in the United States at that time? Thank you.
Well, they were not only great players, but they were great people, and they were part of the reason why this league got off to a pretty good start. They were tremendous players and great ambassadors to the league, and to this day, I stay in touch with both of those players, and they were just quality people, and at a different level as players, and they were just fabulous. And I think the league was very fortunate to have acquired those two players because they were simply outstanding, and they had obviously a great history in the league and won a number of championships. Thank you.
Our next question is from Jimena. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Coach. What was the speech or theme you used to say to the players before the first game?
Players before the first game, but I think everyone was pretty nervous in the first day. Eric alluded to that with the San Jose team as well. It was a whole new experience for us as coaches and for many of the players on the field, and it was just an awesome time. And generally, what I tell our team is to go out and enjoy themselves. And you do your best you can as a coach to have a team prepared and ready to play. And then once the opening whistle blows, it's all up to the players, and we tell them to work hard and enjoy themselves.
All right, well, that concludes our call today. Thank you, Bruce, for joining us. Thank you to Eric Wynalda and also to Jeff Agus. For our media members who joined us today, just a couple reminders that we will be recording this call. We have been recording, so we will provide a transcript following. Included in today's press release you received earlier today, there are also links to the starting lineup, game notes, and some info on where all of the players are now. Please don't hesitate to reach out to MLS Communications with any questions at all. And again, many thanks for joining us today.